Good day, everyone. My name is Heather Millman, and this is my presentation on the importance of accommodating programs and literature for deaf and hard of hearing patrons. Today, some of what I'll be talking about will also be applicable in settings outside the library. But as our focus is librarianship and library and information science, I won't be mentioning other possible applications. First, I'd like to discuss why this topic is important. Simply put, deaf and hard of hearing patrons deserve the same accessibility hearing patrons receive at the library. While there have been strides towards inclusivity, there can still be some improvements, especially considering most programs in this vein are geared towards everyone, rather than focused on individual needs. This means that some programs are lacking accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing patrons, or could be improved. Books and media also deserve to be accessible, and they should contain accurate representations and authentic characters. These books, media, and programs all help foster an environment where deaf, hard of hearing, and hearing patrons can benefit. Through this presentation, I hope you gain a better understanding of how to accommodate deaf and hard of hearing patrons. I also hope to help librarians create programs and provide authentic literature relating to deaf and hard of hearing children and young adults. One large way libraries can be more accommodating to deaf and hard of hearing patrons is through programming. All it takes is one librarian to start a program or take the first steps towards more inclusive programming to help the community be more accepting and the library more accessible. Here are a few examples listed under the library programs category. Making story time for children can be a simple way for children's programs to be more accommodating. There can be programs where there is an ASL interpreter, and if there is a video, subtitles can be added. Storytime can also include books with deaf characters or explaining what it means to be deaf, so that hearing children can better understand those that are deaf or hard of hearing. One such children's book is My Deaf Friend Can Do Anything I Can Do by Tanisha Asby. This book tells the story of two best friends, one who is deaf and one who has a deaf mother. Both of them signed to communicate with each other and their family. The story is a picture book and discusses acceptance and how people are more alike than they are different. Storytime can also be run differently. For example, if the library cannot afford an ASL interpreter, they can invest in videos that have interpreters. An important resource that has videos with interpreters is Signed Stories. Signed Stories is a subscription service that has a variety of stories that include captions and an interpreter. It can be great for children's storytime programs, and the videos also contain images related to the stories being told. Many of the stories are classic fairy tales, and there are also videos for other age groups. Other children's programs can include baby sign language, which can help parents learn sign language with their kids. Babies, young children, and parents can learn simple sign language during these programs so their children can communicate with each other, their parents, and deaf and hard of hearing people. Programs also can be set up specifically to help hearing adults with deaf or hard of hearing children so that their children can learn to develop language skills at an early age. This is important as there is a correlation between children being able to communicate and learning how to read. Bushman states that deaf adults are usually reading at a 4th grade level, while hearing adults are usually reading at a 9th grade level. This can be due to a lack of communication in childhood. If the child learns how to communicate earlier, they are less likely to struggle with reading. If the library offers support and community outside of school, deaf and hard of hearing children are less likely to begin falling behind because of the language barrier. Hearing parents are either learning a new language or with the child, or they aren't, and there is a greater communication barrier, which means that to support deaf and hard of hearing children, the library must also support their hearing parents. For young adults, book discussions and book clubs can help hearing young adults better understand how to respect deaf and hard of hearing people. They can also let go of what prejudices they may have and become more comfortable interacting with deaf and hard of hearing people. Book clubs can also foster much needed discussions and help young adults to have answers to whatever questions they may have about people that are deaf or hard of hearing. The library can have a deaf or hard of hearing author come in and explain their experience in both life and writing. To make it more engaging, it can be an author from one of the books that the club would discuss, such as Alison Gaveris, who wrote The Silence Between Us. Similar to children's programming, the library can also provide programs for young adults to learn simple sign language. The library can also create programs for deaf and hard-of-hearing young adults to have their own book club in sign language, if there is a large enough population of deaf and hard-of-hearing people near the library. Speaking of literature, literature is important. If children and young adults cannot see themselves in literature, they can think that they aren't important or that they are the only ones experiencing life the way they are, which can be isolating. Literature that has bad reputation can be just as bad as no representation at all, as it can promote stereotypes and be upsetting to deaf and hard-of-hearing people while also misinforming hearing people, which is especially problematic to children and young adults who are trying to learn about the world around them and their place in it. This is seen mostly in classic literature and is even present in novels that young adults tend to read for school, such as In To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee and The Catcher in the Rye by J.G. Salinger. In To Kill a Mockingbird, Mrs. Tutti and Fruity are mocked for being deaf, and the children play tricks on them because of it. In The Catcher in the Rye, the main character wishes he were deaf and mute, only to isolate himself from society, which is a harmful stereotype as deaf and mute people are not isolated and have their own community and family. Newer books such as El Delfo focus on building up characters that are deaf and hard of hearing and telling their stories in ways that children and young adults can understand. El Delfo won the John Newbery Medal in 2015 and is one of many newer children's and young adult books that focuses on positivity and inclusivity, which shows how far literature has come over time. ASL literature is also worth briefly mentioning as it is a newer genre relating to deaf and hard-of-hearing people. ASL literature is literature that is consumed by someone telling a story or poem in ASL. This can be done live or can be seen in a video, and is an avenue that deaf and hard-of-hearing people use to pass down stories. Just like how wordplay and rhyme is used in poetry and other written pieces of literature, ASL literature creates the same effects through visual puns and other language plays. I would be remiss not to mention a few ways the library can overall be more accommodating. Libraries can make sure to look at and face deaf and hard-of-hearing patrons so that they can read lips. They can also keep a whiteboard or a pad and pen so that they can write back and forth with deaf or hard-of-hearing patrons. Librarians should gain some form of training regarding how to be respectful to deaf and hard-of-hearing patrons, and possibly learn some ASL, at least emergency signs. Librarians should also have a way to know what discs have subtitles. Each disc should be marked as with or without, or each disc should have subtitles so that hard of hearing and deaf people can have access to them. Through these simple changes, the library can be more accessible for everyone. I've also listed some helpful resources such as FOLDA, the library services for the deaf and hard of hearing, and Sign Stories, which I mentioned earlier. I'd like to leave you with the message that inclusivity is important and that small steps can really make a big difference. Thank you all for listening.